Welcome back to 3 Zen. So I showed up down at Pitt to become qualified as a T-38 IP in February 1975. And at my table there were 4 of us that had flown heavies. There was myself, a C-141, C-130 driver. Tom Nelson flew EC-121s, and McDonald flew tankers, and Dale Masuda flew C-141s, and we all sat at the same table. Well, Tom Nelson, as it turns out, had gone through UPT pilot training at Randolph as I had. He was a couple classes ahead of me. I did not know him at the time, and he was one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. I mean, he could say good morning to you, you would hesitate and start laughing. He just had that kind of personality. He had a perspective of things in life that would just crack you up. At any rate, like I said, he'd flown EC-121s in Southeast Asia. And for those of you that are not familiar, the EC-121 was a converted Lockheed, the Connie Constellation, that they put a radome on its back, and then flew it on orbit in northern Thailand and off the coast. The Navy flew them also as radar pickets, and they were up there to detect MiG activity for the most part. So anyway, Tom was telling about flying these things up maybe even southern Laos, I'm not sure, but he said they're flying these things usually on orbit about 9 to 11,000 feet, just, I don't know, 40-mile legs, 30-mile legs, whatever. And he said they just drone along for hours like that. He said this one day they went up there and they're flying their orbit, and every time they got to this one point in the orbit, maybe a turn point, they'd go into a turn and they'd see these Gomers shooting off bottle rockets at them. And he said they'd sit there, kind of amusing. These rockets would come up and then they'd fizzle out and go down, and they'd come up and fizzle out and go down. And he says every time they got to a certain point in their orbit, they'd see these bottle rockets coming up at them. So he said they were just kind of amazed by it. Those guys getting any better? No, they're not getting any better. So anyway, they watched this, I think he said, for a couple days, a couple weeks, whatever. And he said finally they went back to, they came in from a mission one day, and they're going through their in brief, and one of the intel guys said, you see anything odd today, or you observe anything different today? And somebody on the crew says, you know what? He says, no, not particularly, but we did see something that's kind of entertaining. He said, what's that? And he says, well, we got up to this area here. He pointed it out, and he said, those morons were shooting off bottle rockets. It was really quite a show to see. So the intel guys took that in, and they went back into their intel room, closed the doors, pulled the shades down on the windows, which were painted black, but it made them feel good. Anyway, they spent a couple hours there scratching their heads, scratching their asses, swapping the two. And then they came out, they told Tom and the crew, those aren't bottle rockets. He said those are the early model SA-7s, SAMs, the shoulder-held surface-to-air missiles. I think they call them Strelas. He says, they're shooting those bottle rockets at you dumbasses. We're going to have to move your orbit in case they get lucky someday. But the way Tom told it was just hilarious. He said, everybody comes up in the cockpit, they're leaning out to watch the Gomers shooting bottle rockets. He thought it was some kind of a Thai or Laotian festival. Well, it probably would have been a festival if they had gotten lucky. Anyway, if I can think of another Tom Nelson story, I'll be more than happy to share it with you. He's really a good guy, just a lot of fun to be around. One of the most positive guys I ever met in my life, and infectiously so. So with that being said, it's good to see everybody here this Sunday morning. This is Bobo. Base Gear Stop.